Alright everybody, welcome back to the railway. Not very usual I'd do something like this, but I thought I'd talk about this engine today as it's the latest one to the layout. And this is the Hornby B17. I picked this one up for a reasonable price from Buffers Model Railways down in, I believe they're just in Somerset, but I could be wrong, could be in Dorset. And yeah, picked it up for a very reasonable price of £115. It's a very nice model, so we'll get into it. We'll start it off today with a little bit of the backstory. So in 1926, with the addition of vacuum assisted brake coaching stock and the additional loading brought onto the Great Eastern section, the Hornby B17s, as you see here, needed supplementing with more powerful and similarly capable locomotives to help with the express passenger work and the passenger work in general on the Great Eastern section. However, Gresley's A1s, later A3s, were just too heavy for the region. The axle loadings were too heavy because of some of the infrastructure. Some of the track beds were built on marshes, so it needed a relatively light axle loading. So the challenge was set to produce a 3-cylinder 460 locomotive with a tractive effort of 25,000 pounds, with the same motion, valve gear and connection assembly as was seen on the D49 Hunts class, with a light axle loading of 17 tons. The initial batch of 10 was originally going to be done at Darlington, but as they were unable to satisfy fully Gresley's ambitions for the class, the contract was given to North British Locomotive Company based in Glasgow. They nicked some parts from a batch of A1s that they had built alongside the Royal Scots, which were built for the LMS, whilst the boiler design was based upon the K3 and the O2's boiler design. This particular example is 61619 Welbeck Abbey. She's survived until I believe it was the 9th of March 1959, where she was withdrawn and scrapped soon after, and unfortunately none of this class was preserved. Many of them were scrapped quite soon after withdrawal. So without further ado, we should move on to the next section of the review, which will be what you get included within the box. Okay, so what you get included in the box is your standard affair here, where we have a nice little detail bag for the brake rods, cylinder drain cogs, footsteps, guard irons, vacuum pipes, train heating pipes, and also your instructions for the class with routine maintenance, the general purposes, DCC ready, running hints, where to fit your parts, how to remove the body, fitting the chip, and also your lubricating points, and then finally your brake rods, and then TV suppression, parts and spares, and a few safety warnings. The packaging is your standard affair of the Hornby block of ice, and then finally included in is obviously the model itself. It shouldn't really have this sheen, but Hornby has this thing of putting just a tad too much oil on their locos, and this one, when we inspected it at the shop, was covered in oil. They gave it an initial clean off, and I've subsequently cleaned it off here, but there's still a sheen to it. So we will now move on. We will have a look at this loco in a bit closer detail. Okay then, so here she is, Welbeck Abbey, up close and personal. As already mentioned, this sheen on the locomotive, they normally do have quite a nice satin finish, but unfortunately just because of the amount of oil that got on the locomotive, it's very shiny. probably will make weathering tricky, so I'm not sure how I'm going to get around that, but I'm pretty sure remove the body, a nice wash off in soapy water in the airing cupboard to dry should sort that out nicely. Apologies for any dust on the locomotive, as you can see here on the tender, but she has only just really completed running in, which is why in the title sequence you've seen the B1 running around with a rake of coaches as well, just so it wasn't this engine running around light. So, initial impressions straight out the box. It's a very nice looking locomotive, very well detailed, and I haven't really looked up the retail price for it, so I can't really give you a true value for money opinion, other than for what I paid for it, it was alright. You know, £115 I find is an acceptable price for this locomotive, considering the level of detail you've got on it, some of the features. I wouldn't argue with that too much. The motion on it is nice and fine, very, very well done. I think in the long run these nameplates will get replaced with etched ones, just to make it, give them a bit more depth. It's in a very nice application of the BR Brunswick green with an early crest. This tender is a very nice tender, very light though. It's one thing I found with this model in general. She is very light, but it doesn't seem to have any problems. A bit like the Hornby B17, it's a bit light, but there's no pulling problems really. And yeah, if you have a look in the cab there, none of the fancy glitz and the glamour. I'll zoom in a bit there for you if we can get it there. None of the glitz and the glamour, but it is a very well detailed cab. Marks on the dials there, and all the brass work is nice and shiny. Individual glazing pieces as well. Just adjust the focus and everything. All of the usual bits that you would expect to see, nicely separately fitted, like handrails, the sprung buffers, guard irons, lamp irons, and the removable coal load. Nicely and separately fitted parts, very well applied as well. And again, one thing I have noticed on mine, the safety valves are ever so slightly off centre and on the cock towards the left hand side of the loco, but that's not a massive issue really. When you see it running around, people are going to be more interested in it running around rather than little details like that. But yeah, coming around to the front as well, a nice separately fitted coupling there, screw link coupling there, nicely separately fitted smoke box start and lamp irons and handrails again. Very, very nice. I haven't noticed any warping in the running plate, and as you can see there, particularly around by the dome, you can see what I mean by the oil, excessive oil on the locomotive causing issues with a sheen. But that's the only really down mark I can give this locomotive really. It's just had too much oil. But on the whole, a very nice, very pleasant locomotive. So we'll move on, we'll get her onto the track. We'll give her a little bit of a run around the line, and then I will swap this tension lock coupling over for a KD, and we'll get her pulling some stock. Okay, she's now on the line and she's ready fully off. So I'll just release the brake on the controller. She pulls away nice and smoothly. It's set to about 70% power. See, very nice. very smooth and just glides. Okay, so she's on the layout now. I've added some other details and gave it a quick test run off camera, which is where I've picked up a couple of things that I thought I'd make the viewers aware of. Number one, there's some guard irons down here. I've had to trim the ends off as they kept catching on point work, so they need trimming down if you intend to run the locomotive with them fitted. As you can see, this second smaller vacuum pipe, the original one had this little cross piece on the bottom of it, and it kept catching on the NEM pocket, which on these locomotives is a solid construction which is cast with the bogie, so you can't take it off. It kept fouling on that and it kept lifting the bogie off, therefore causing derailments. So I took that off, and unfortunately as I took the component off, it all fell apart and broken up on me, so I constructed a new one out of nickel silver wire. Just needs a touch up with black paint. As you can see, it's slightly shiny there. Quick spray over it will just need a touch up later on. Other than that, all the other details are on and they fit. The only detail that wasn't fitted was back here. In there should be a little coupling hook where it came with a separately fitted screw link coupling. Obviously I haven't fitted that, just mainly because it will foul the coupling, but she now has a KD fitted to her, and she's on a rake of 5 crimson and cream grizzly coaches with the appropriate head code. So without further ado, I'll release the brake and we'll see how she runs. So this is a fair load I thought for this locomotive. Something quite common you'll see her with is five coaches, whether it be Mark 1s, a nice mix, or 5 Grizzly coaches. And she's handling them quite happily and quite easily as well. Okay, so I've now got both her and the B1 running. As you can see, the Brunswick green against these teaks looks very, very striking. So yeah, other than a few modifications to separately fitted parts, construction of a part due to pilot error, the locomotive is very much what I was hoping and expected it to be. Well worth the money, and also very striking in the way it looks. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed that this little video I put together on the Hornby B17. In my opinion, they are worth the money. You know, you can pick them up relatively cheaply, depending on where you look. I've seen some sellers on eBay selling them for less than £100. Who knows, maybe one of the bigger retailers like Hatton's or TMC or whatever, they might have a sale on, they might be even less than that. But they are good money, and they are a good loco for the money you pay for them. Like I said in the previous clip,
pilot error here where one of the parts got damaged. I had to scratch build up and replacement, but again, that was my fault. A bit surprising that you have to do some work and modify the guard irons to run the locomotive with them on, and that pipe work needs trimming down, but other than that the locomotive is fine, runs really well, and I think she'll make a cracking little addition to the layout. So I'd like to thank you all for your time in watching this. I'd also like to thank you for your continued support. Wishing you all a very happy new year. Here's to 2022. Take care, stay safe out there, and goodbye.